Hey lads, today I'm going to the monthly Saturday Swiss at the Phoenix Chess Academy. I'm excited about this one. It's under 1700 section that I'll be in. I'm the lowest in the section. I'm 1500 about. The format for the tournament is 25 with 5 seconds delay. So stay tuned and see what we come up with.
Round one of the tournament, I was playing against a young man named Kann, and his rating was 1651. My rating was 1508, which is a bit weird because at the end of the last tournament, I was rated 1493. So I don't know what happened there, but for some reason, I was rated 1508. I'll take it. I had the black pieces in this game, and my opponent played e4. But I actually thought before coming to the tournament that I really just want to play some more gambity lines. And so I played an opening that I'm very unfamiliar with, but I thought I had a game online. It's over on my Patreon. Go check it out. It's really good. But I played the move d5. And this is the Scandinavian defense. And after they take, which is typical, I like to set up another pawn to gambit. I played the move knight f6 with a plan to go pawn to e6 and give up another pawn so that I get two pieces developed, whereas maybe they just have a pawn here defending. You know, this is typical. And I love the Icelandic gambit. If I can play that every time, I'm pretty happy. My opponent played d4, and so I went for the Icelandic gambit, giving them another pawn. They didn't take. So I was a wee bit bummed that they didn't take. I think the best move here is to capture, but that's okay. They didn't take. We tried to transpose into something that I knew a little bit better. So I took his pawn, feeling okay about this. My opponent developed their bishop to d3, and you can already see we're into a sort of Caro Kann structure. And so I thought to myself after he played this, I kind of know what I want to go for. So I put my bishop on d6, which is kind of like the Tartakower, a wee bit different because we've got this pawn on d5. But I knew this position, so this is what I went for. He castled, I castled. He played pawn to c3, and I brought my bishop out to g4. He put his knight b to d2. And I put my rook onto the open file. Now, you all probably know, or maybe you don't know, but the Tartakower Caro Kann is my favorite Caro Kann to play. So I was really actually kind of excited and pleased that I had gotten this opening from playing a Scandinavian. Now, typically, you don't have this pawn here. Typically in the Caro Kann, this pawn is sitting here in the Tartakower. And so I would normally have this pawn here, and this knight would be traded off for usually this knight. So it is a little bit different. But I kind of looked at it and I thought, I'm glad I don't have doubled pawns. You know, this looks like a better Caro Kann. So I was actually feeling pretty pleased. My opponent played queen c2, so I played h6, not allowing them to capture this pawn for free. Now, I did have a knight here on f6, so I really didn't need to worry about them capturing because I would just recapture. So I don't know if h6 was all that necessary, but it wasn't a bad move. I was fine with it. He played h3, I took the knight, he took the knight, or the bishop, and here I played knight b to d7, with the idea of bringing my knight around here to f8 and honestly just leaving it on f8, getting my pawns moved, a queen up here and going for checkmate here. Maybe some sack here at some point, something comes off. Not entirely sure. He played bishop d2. I put my knight into the center, attacking that bishop. And I thought if he takes here, I am more than happy recapturing with my rook. Take, rook captures. I thought then I can get the queen behind and maybe defend this rook. I don't know. I'm not entirely sure about this. This was all kind of experimental, but I didn't think the moves I was making were wrong. He put his rook onto the open file. I put my knight onto f6 to support the knight that's in the center. I thought this knight was extremely well placed. I was pretty happy with this. They pushed the pawn to c4. And here I had a little think. If he captures here, now I only have two defenders of this knight. He's got two attackers plus another one, 3 attackers. So I really need to keep defending this knight. So I thought about playing the move c6, and then if he captures, I could recapture. I thought about maybe putting my queen here. A few different things went through my mind, and I came up with a move c6. That's what I decided to go for. Here he didn't capture though. He played the move bishop to c3, and I thought this was a very odd move. I thought this is really strange that he's placing it here behind a pawn that is clearly not going to be taken. You know, it's not going to be moved out of the way. So this bishop looks like it's on a very passive square. And I was feeling pretty good here. I decided in this position, instead of taking on c3, which is actually the engine's top recommendation, the other recommendation is rook e7. The other recommendation is just to play b6. I went for a slightly different approach, rook to c8. And I didn't feel bad about this. I thought if I can get my rook to c8, then I can drop my bishop back to b8, queen to c7, my rooks are connected, and I'm looking down this diagonal that I want to be on. And so he played his knight back to e2, d2. So here I thought for a little while, and I thought I could capture here, but if I capture here, his queen gets put onto a really bad square. So I thought this actually looks like a better capture, and also he's got the bishop pair, and so it can't be that bad capturing another bishop, one of his bishops. So that's what I went for. Top engine move. But here he didn't take back with a queen. He took back with the b pawn, which I was a little surprised about, but the engine really likes it. I thought that this might be worse for him because they're doubled, but after thinking about it after I played the move, I realized, well, if we take here, his pawns aren't doubled anymore, and he's definitely wanting to like capture or do something with this pawn at some point. So I pulled my bishop back, going with my plan. He put his knight back onto f3, and here I went queen c7. So my position is completely how I want it. I know I have a goal of trying to get rid of this rook or this knight, and if I'm able to get rid of this knight, I'm moving in with the queen. So I have a very clear sort of plan. I was thinking potentially g5, g4, but this isn't how the game went. My opponent struck out with knight e5, blocking my battery of this diagonal down to h2, and also attacking my pawn here on f7. And here things started to go a wee bit wrong, and I couldn't come up with a good move here. Now the move in this position is actually c5, and what's the point behind c5? It's very simple. If he were to take me, well, then I can just capture this knight for free, because he's only got one defender and I have 1, 2, 3 attackers. But right now he's defending with a pawn, and I really don't want to take with a rook or a queen, because I get 3, he gets 5, and then I can't even take this because it's I'd have to sack my queen. You know, sack the exchange. So c5 is really good, but then he wouldn't have taken here, obviously. And I thought maybe he just doubles a rook. So let's have a look at this. c5, he doubles. And now if I take here, I'm just losing. Like, I just don't think this is good for me. He's got no doubled pawns. He's even attacking this one. And I don't really seem to have any way forwards in the position. So the move I played instead of going c5 was the move knight d7. Just trying to challenge this knight right away. But after playing this move, I realized I've allowed his bishop into the position. I'm no longer guarding the h7 square. And so that's what he did. He went in with his bishop checking me. And in this position, if I go to h8, knight f7 takes f7 is mate, which is pretty disgusting. The bishop covers, the knight hits my king, and my own pawn is blocking me in. Definitely don't want to go that way. So I went the other way. So I put my king on f8. And now he played the move that really frustrated me, f4. I wasn't even looking at this move, but it's the one move in the position that does very well for him. Every other move, I'm doing totally fine. Whatever he plays. The next best move is knight takes a d7 check, and I can just capture here. And you can see the eval bar, it's back to completely equal. So that didn't happen. He played f4 like an absolute boss, and now I can't take here. I wanted to capture this knight, and then he recaptures. I take with rook and be up a pawn. But now if I capture, he's just going to take that knight off. And so I was feeling a wee bit frustrated here. And unfortunately, I took the knight off, and this is not a good move. The best move here was knight f6, going back here after the bishop, but it's very hard to find a move that sort of seems like you're just taking some backward steps. I was already on f6, so why am I going back to f6? So psychologically, that move wasn't working for me. I took the knight, he took with pawn, and now I'm just facing these two rooks that are looking down here. A queen and a bishop on the same diagonal, while all my pieces are somewhat passive behind this beautiful pawn chain, advanced pawn chain that white has. This pawn is very frustrating for me to deal with. So here I tried to rectify things by going after that pawn chain by playing f6. And here he just moved his rook up. His only plan is to double here and then eventually take. He doesn't have to take straight away. And so now I play the move rook e7. I thought I'll try to double as well, but he came up with a beautiful move, queen to g6. And what does queen to g6 do? Well, I mean, it completely destroys me. My best move here, if you can believe it, is rook takes e5. That's my best move. You know, he's just going to recapture. And if that's my best move, what's my second best move? My second best move is queen d6. And he captures. I mean, that's just crazy. Then I take here. Okay, kind of makes a little bit of sense now that I see I get a free rook. But like, nobody's playing this. Not fun. So in this position, I played the move rook to f7, just trying to defend my one big weakness. I have two defenders. He's got 1, 2, 3 attackers. I knew I was losing, but he pushed the pawn to e6, and now this rook is extremely weak. I played rook e7, and now he has a force mate in 4 moves, which he found. He played the beautiful move rook takes f6, a brilliant move. If I capture him here, well, you already see checkmate on g8, so I can't capture him. And so in this position, I block with rook f7, which I'm protecting with my queen. But here he played rook takes f7, and my king can move over here, or my queen can take. But if my queen takes, checkmate, so I move my king over. And then he played the beautiful rook d7 check with the queen. Not even taking my queen. Nasty move. My queen can't take here because it's a check this way, so I only can move my king. He's got multiple checkmates on the board. He could checkmate with his rook to f1, he could checkmate with his queen to f7, or he could checkmate with the beautiful pawn to e7. And he chose queen f7 checkmate. He outplayed me completely. The engine says that I played with a 75.4% accuracy, and my opponent played with a 92.2. He was winning the entire game. I mean, it was even for most of it, about the first 25 moves or so. But he was able to just take advantage of my couple inaccuracies, my couple mistakes, and really just destroy me. He played very well, and 1600 over the board is just on another level, and I need to step up my game a wee bit so that I can hang with these guys. But I enjoyed the game. Let's jump over to game 2 and see how we fared against Big Ed. This was the second game of the tournament, but the third time I've ever played Ed. So let's see who can win the big 3. The very first time I had the white pieces when I played against Ed. The second time I had the black pieces. Both games were ended in a draw. And so this game was a serious one for me. Ed has been rated, I believe, up to about 1900. He is currently rated 1580. So he's a solid player. And I shouldn't come out too confident anytime I play against him. But I'll just show you how this game went. D4, knight f6, knight c3, and the one move that I absolutely hate to play against It's kind of an old Benoni kind of setup. I don't know what it is called. Maybe it's a Banco eventually. You know, I hate this move. I really hate this move. And so I know the best response. I've been studying it a wee bit, but I just don't like the positions I get. I play d5. He plays d6, has transposed into a Benoni Indian defense, and I play the move e4. He plays g6, and his moves are very simple. He just wants to fianchetto the bishop, castle the king. His bishop's on a great diagonal, and then try to play on the queen side maybe a wee bit and see if he can get a bit of space, because in the Benoni, you're often very cramped as black, whereas white has all the space, which means white generally does a little bit better. You can see, according to the engine, I'm up over half a pawn, so it is a better position for white, but it's hard to play, and it's not a Jabava London that I like to play. I played knight f3, he played bishop g7, I put my bishop on d3, and he pulled his bishop over to g4. Here I played h3, trying to just kick his bishop away, thinking if he goes back here, well, he's trapped. If he takes here, I can recapture with queen. I wasn't entirely sure what he would do, but I didn't think he would come back to this square or this square. He captured my knight. I recaptured with queen. I was feeling pretty comfortable here. You can see the engine is still giving it about the same advantage for white. I have more space, but generally when you have more space, you don't want to trade off pieces. You want your opponent to be constricted and have all these pieces and not have any places to put them. So the more pieces that come off for black, the better his position is going to become. So I had that in my mind as I kept playing here. He goes knight b to d7. I castle. He puts his knight onto e5 into the center. The engine's jumped up to about 1 point in my advantage, and I didn't quite see exactly how I am supposed to respond here. I thought a lot about where this knight is attacking my queen, but where do I go? Do I pull over here to e3? That didn't look great. I wasn't entirely sure what I'm looking at on this diagonal, and it just didn't seem fun. I thought maybe come back here and then support the bishop over here to b5. Maybe I just retreat the entire way back to d1 and just defend this and then retake it. But then this move seemed just as reasonable to go back with the bishop. I also looked at this move jumping in with the knight, but I'm in danger. I thought, what about just throwing in a check first? But does anything even change? Check here. King steps over or knight steps over, and then I still have to move my queen. So I played the move queen e2, which apparently, according to the engine, it's not even in the top 3 moves. The best move was bishop b5, attacking the king, which I probably should have gone for. I looked at it. Second best was queen g3, and third best was queen e3. So I played not one of the best moves, but I still have a slight advantage. Here he captures, I recapture, and he castles. Now, I really had to think, how am I going to proceed here? What way do I attack? And I saw that I had a rook here on f1, and the rook is eyeing down this file, but there's a pawn in his way. So I thought maybe I can push this pawn, support my e5 push, take some more space here after capture. This pawn becomes isolated. My rook's looking at a minor piece. Maybe my bishop gets active. I thought about all this, and I thought f4 looks pretty fun, looks pretty good. He moves his knight, so I continue my push, f5. And now there's something I need to remember, and I need to ingrain this in my brain. Any time that I've castled kingside and I push my f-pawn, I need to be looking at this diagonal because it's open and my king is sitting right there on g1. Now you're going to see why I'm talking about this in a minute, because Ed came up with some nasty stuff. Queen comes to b6 and I throw my bishop onto g5 like an absolute idiot. Now, the way I've just shown you this here, you're going to be like, oh, well, it's a simple mistake. I spent like 5 or 10 minutes on this move. I sat here looking for something to come up with. And I didn't see that this queen is looking at my king and that a pawn push is going to win my queen. I mean, yeah, maybe I can block. He's still winning my queen on one of these squares. I mean, I couldn't believe how stupid this was. But let me just show you what I was thinking. Why did I go bishop g5? Well, forget about this. Okay, just forget about this. Let's say he goes here or something. I just thought if you want to attack a pawn chain, you need to hit the base of it. And I also thought about maybe moving my knight to b5 and taking this pawn later at some point because there wouldn't be no pawn on e7. So this was all going through my head and I just completely missed this stupid check. Oh, man. I mean, there's really no need to go through the rest of this game, but I will. Queen e3, blocking the check because my bishop's holding. He just puts his bishop here on d4. I move my knight over to try and attack his queen because mine's in danger. He takes with check. I move my king. He then moves his queen to safety. I take his bishop. He takes my knight. I take his pawn. He takes my pawn. I move my rook over. Why? To defend this pawn? Who cares about this pawn? I mean, why am I... He just pushes. I push. He takes another pawn. I move my bishop here, hitting his rook, thinking maybe I can come here and get a back rank sneaky, even though it's protected by 2 pieces. Nothing. Have to defend this pawn because it's checkmate. He takes another pawn. I move and tempo his queen. He moves his queen here, hitting my bishop. Gotta move my bishop back. Defend my rook? No, I just have only like one square that it's not going to be in danger. If I move it to this square here, it's in danger. This one, the queen's hitting it. This one, the queen's hitting it. This one, the rook's hitting it. This one's the rook's hitting it. So there's really only one option. He takes. I move my king. I don't know why. I don't have anything else to do. He moves his knight in. And in this position, I resign the game because it's a force mate in 5 moves. Are you good enough to spot it? My best move is an inaccurate move. Can you believe it? Rook e2 is my best move to stop checkmate in less than 5. Knight g4, checking my king. I only have one move. Gotta go here. Rook takes e2. Bishop f2. Queen takes f2. And then whatever I do, I mean, my best move is b4 apparently. Rook e1, and then any move, the next move, rook takes g1 is mate. So this move, this is mate. So any other move, this is mate. Let's say I play the beautiful b5. Checkmate. That was my game with Ed. And according to chess.com, he played with a 92.8% accuracy. I played with an 80.3. He played fantastic. You know, you can't beat some of these players. They are well versed in the game, and they don't blunder. They're not young and foolish like some of us who blunder a lot. Good game, Ed. Let's jump into game 3, a very exciting one where I got the black pieces again, but the game was extremely tense. I think you'll enjoy it. Game 3, I got to play against an opponent that I had previously played with the white pieces and I had beaten him. So I was feeling confident even though I had the black pieces. His rating was 13-12 and he played e4. So this time I actually played a Caro Kann, unlike the previous black game where I played the Scandinavian. He played d4, I put my pawn into the center. We got an exchange Caro Kann, so the pawns exchange in the middle of the board, and he played c4. This is called the Panov attack, and it's one of the Caro Kanns that I hate playing against the most. I put my knight on c6, he put his knight on c3, and I put my other knight on f6. So this is the way to defend against the Panov attack. If any of you struggle with the Panov, you're always supposed to develop both of your knights instead of bringing your bishop out. Often your bishop will come to e6 when defending against the Panov. He put his knight onto f3, and I played the pawn to g6, which is not typical for Caro Kann games. You know, normally this bishop stays on this diagonal, comes out to d6, maybe it comes out to b4, kind of like a Winaware French. Sometimes it even comes to e7 if, you know, this bishop pins the knight to the queen. So putting it on g7 is often a bit weird. He put his bishop onto f4, and I played a3, or not a3, a6, because I didn't want his knight jumping in here. He took the pawn, I captured back, He took, I captured back, and now his queen came to a4. Now, why is this a mistake? Well, simply, I thought, because there's a check here and it's a fork. And so this is the move I played, although this is not the best move. The best move in this position, maybe it's not super obvious, but it's the move e5. And why is this move not obvious? Well, the reason is because he's got 1, 2, 3 defenders of e5. So why would I chuck a pawn into e5? I mean, it just seems a bit illogical. The other good move is playing the pawn up to b5. And this one is a lot more logical because it kicks his queen away. But this move, I just don't understand it. So let me just show you. The best response for him here is actually bishop d2. Well, you might be thinking, what if he takes? Because this piece is pinned. It's not even defending. So what if he just captures here and hits my rook? Well, I have bishop b4 check. And this is disgusting. He can't take because the knight will then be able to move and will be defending. And so here he has to go king d1, and here I can just castle, and I'm just getting crazy development, all for sacrificing one pawn. All my pieces are well placed. I mean, this bishop isn't, but I mean, it's going to get into the game very soon, and I can just take this or go after this or whatever. It seems like stuff's going to happen. I didn't consider any of this. What if he had taken with the knight? Well, if he takes with the knight, same thing happens. Check here. King has to go to d1. Or maybe you say, oh, what about bishop blocks here? Well, then we just take on d4 and it's not defended. He got the pawn here, but now we're getting his pawn. So e5 is honestly a move that I'm going to be looking for in the future. It looked beautiful. None of that happened. I played the move queen to e4, checking the king and hitting the bishop. And so he blocked with his bishop. And my next move was my big blunder. And even though my opponent was lower rated, I realized about 10 seconds after playing it what I had done. And I tried to keep a cool composure with my face, not giving away that I'd done something wrong. I played the move bishop to h6. And why is this a blunder? Well, because he has knight to d2 hitting my queen. And where does my queen go if I want to keep this pin and stop him from taking me? Well, I could pull back to e6, keeping the pin. But e6 didn't look good because bishop comes here, hitting my queen. My queen can't stay here, can't go here because of the pawn, and can't come back here because of the knight. And so I'd have to go over to h4. So then I started looking at queen h4, but then I thought, if queen h4, he's going to be able to attack my queen again by just coming back with the knight. And so maybe this is a forced draw, and I did not want to draw this guy. I also looked at bishop h6, queen h6, and now he's got the move d5, attacking my pinned knight. And so I was just thinking, I'm in huge trouble. I don't know what I've done here. So I was very happy when my opponent did not play knight to d2. He instead played the move queen to a3. And I breathed a sigh of relief, and I quickly put my bishop back on g7, the square that it really should be on, looking down this diagonal. My opponent pulled his bishop out to c4. I castled. And here I started to feel a little tense because the position was getting a little crazy, especially after he played knight g5. Now, although knight g5 is a mistake, it is on a good square. His bishop's looking at f7. My knight's defending this pawn, and his queen's hitting this pawn. I thought I had two defenders, but now I'm thinking I'm going to have to move my queen, and I really shouldn't be grabbing pawns. I go for a pawn grab, and I kind of was wondering, is this the right move? Really, should I be doing this? So I grab the pawn on g2, and here my opponent long castles, which I think is the best move. Yeah, the engine says is the best move. His rook defends his other rook, and now I'm thinking, what if he comes here? I can't come to this square or this square because of the knight. I can't stay on these squares because the rook will be here. I can't come here because of the knight. Can't come here because of the bishop. So my queen will be trapped in one move if I'm not careful. So I have to move my queen. So I move it here so that it's got some way to escape. And I was just feeling a wee bit stressed about it all. My opponent plays queen b3, and now you can see 3 attackers on this square, and I've only got 2 defenders. How do I defend again? I played the move e6 because I couldn't find a great defense. Now, although this is inaccurate, it does stop my opponent's threat, so it wasn't terrible, but the best move here would have been knight takes d4, and kind of a crazy move because after takes here, he's looking here at this, but he's also got 3 pieces looking at this square. But I actually would have here queen takes g5, removing one of the attackers of this square. It's a check. After his queen would block on e3, he's only got 1 attacker, so I would have been totally fine. I could just trade here, and he's got an isolated pawn, and I have connected pawns, and I'm up 2 pawns, so I would be doing totally fine in this endgame. It didn't happen like this. I played e6, and my opponent moved his rook over to attack my queen. I moved my queen, and he pushes d5. And here I had a long think. I wasn't entirely sure how to respond to this. I knew I needed to move my knight, but after he takes here, it just seems like there's a lot of pressure here. But thankfully, moving my knight to a5 hits both of his pieces, and one of them is the queen, so it does tempo his queen, and he's not able to take this pawn with any sort of speed. So I attack his queen, and I didn't know if this was going to work because he can move his queen over and attack my knight again and still have this pressure here. But that's sort of what he did. He attacked my knight again, and so here I just took the bishop off. He recaptured, and now I can deal with this issue here. I capture the pawn on d5, and my opponent surprisingly didn't capture back, probably because he didn't want a queen trade, and he instead played the move queen to c7. And this was very interesting to me. I had a long think in this position, probably for about 10 minutes. And the move that I was considering was bishop d7. And I really had a long think about this. I was like, what's going to happen if I go bishop d7? Most logically, he's going to capture on b7. Then I can throw my rook over to c8, checking his king. His king can't be blocked. He doesn't want to block with the queen. And so his king's going to go over here or here. And I thought, oh wait, this square doesn't work. Queen's looking at it. So then I saw that this is actually forced. His king is going to be forced to this square. And so then I thought, well, if it's forced to this square, is there any way that I can attack this square? And I saw queen to c2, attacking the king. And now this square is forced. So I saw that I can get the king to this square. And then I was considering, what if I take here and bring the bishop here, hitting the king again? This didn't work because I saw his queen was on b7. So that's what I was thinking, but not quite working yet. His king's over here. My queen's here. How do I continue? I wasn't entirely sure, but I thought this is a cool idea to go for. We can get aggressive. We can get his king into the center, and maybe he's going to mess up. And this was apparently the best move by the engine. I took a long time considering all this, but my opponent didn't respond to my move. He played f4. And so now I have the beautiful rook c8. And when I played this, he kind of, like he saw that he had blundered. He missed the pin of the queen to the king. And so he pulled his queen back. And instead of taking it and allowing him to capture my rook, I just put my rook onto c6, thinking I'll just double. Here he plays his rook up to d2. I thought for a few minutes, and then I thought, you know what? It's too stressful. I'm just going to capture the queen. And he laughed. And he was like, yeah, you probably should just take it, make things simple. After he recaptured my rook, I put my rook onto c8. He defends. I went queen captures here. This is actually a forced mate in 13, according to the engine. He moves over, and now it's a forced mate in 8. I played the move bishop f5, pinning the rook to the king, and then he pulled his bishop out over here. In this position, I took the bishop because he can't capture my rook because he's pinned. But what would have been more beautiful would have been queen c4, going after this rook, putting my queen in danger, and he can't capture me because of the pin still. So here he would go rook c1, then I would take, then he would take, then I would capture, he'd have to move, and here we would have the checkmate like this. Could have been beautiful ending like that, but instead of that, I played the bishop here, he defended here, I captured the bishop, and the game ended. He resigned. It was a really fun game. The engine says that I played with an 82.5% accuracy, and you know that I wasn't completely accurate because I played that move bishop h6 and blundered, and my opponent played with a 69.6% accuracy. It was a really fun game. I was glad to get the win, finally get 1 point in this tournament. I wasn't feeling so great about my first 2 losses, but going into game 4, I was up against a high 1600, somebody who I'd beaten in a blitz game for fun, but had lost with the black pieces before. And for some reason, I got the black pieces again. 3 black games in a row in the tournament, but I was going to come out and absolutely destroy this kid. I needed to be strong. Check it out. My opponent's name was Rayanch. You might remember a few tournaments prior when I had the black pieces, I was playing the Caro Kann, and I had a very nice position where I was up about half a point, and I opened up my G file and kind of sacrificed everything and lost, and it was terrible, and I just was super focused on an attack. So having that game in the back of my mind, going into this game, I thought, I don't want to sacrifice and try to push something that isn't there. I thought, I'll just play slow positional, improving chess, and win this game. And so my opponent played e4, I played c6, d4, d5, the Caro Kann, knight c3, pawn takes, knight takes, knight f6, knight takes, e takes f6, and we are into a Tartakower, my favorite Caro Kann. He puts his knight onto f3, I play bishop d6, this is all book. He pulls his bishop out to d3, I castle, he castles, I put my bishop on g4. I like this move before playing this move because this move, I can get kicked, but if I play this one first, then I can't, and he plays h3, then I can't play the bishop to this square. I like the bishop being on this square. He kicks, I pull back. He puts his bishop on e3. I put my rook onto e8, and as you can see, so far, I haven't made a single inaccuracy. I was playing perfect chess. He plays c3, I play knight to d7, a slightly inaccurate move apparently. Apparently the best move is bishop c7 and preparing this attack on h2 straight away. But I played knight to d7, still top engine move, one of the top engine moves. He goes g4, I put my bishop on g6, he takes, I take, and I get the beautiful pawn cube. The engine is saying I'm up about half a pawn worth of material here. I was feeling very good. I know the pawn cube is a beautiful structure in chess and I can do very well. He pushes on d5, and it was at this point that I had the longest think of the game. I was really considering, what move do I play to deal with this? Let's have a look at it. If I take here, he can capture with queen, hitting my bishop, and I just didn't like the look of that. I thought, okay, maybe knight comes to b6, hitting his queen, and my queen defends my bishop, but I just didn't like it. And so what I ended up deciding to do was playing the move knight to b8, which is a mistake. I thought after captures, I can recapture with my knight, but he doesn't have to capture here. Here he just played the simple and slow and quiet move c4, defending his pawn. And now if I capture, he captures. He's got an isolated pawn. Maybe that looks better for me. But then I thought, I'm just going to go with my original intent. Let's put the bishop on c7, get my queen onto d6, and go for checkmate. Here he pulls his queen over to b3, looking at my pawn on b7. And I just think about it for a minute and I say, Owen, you are a genius. You're going to beat this 1680, whatever rated he was. He was 1692. I said, you're going to beat this guy. I'm going to play like an absolute monster. I play queen d6. And I allow him to take the pawn. And he takes it. And I knew that I had a forced draw. I knew I could draw the game. rook takes e3, pawn takes e3, check, king h1, check, king g1, and here I had to have the longest think of the entire game. What would you guys do? Is it a good idea to take a forced draw? Or would you guys go for more? Would you guys say in your mind, I can be better than this. I can do great things in my life. I can achieve the heights. Or I could just draw 1600. You know, what would you do? Honestly, what would you do? Would you go for glory? Or would you just take a draw? You know me, I'm Blunder Man. I went for glory. And it was actually quite funny. Maritza, the woman FIDE master who runs the Phoenix Chess Academy, after the game, I came out and she said, you should have taken the draw. And she laughed. She knew that what I did was completely wrong. But I took the pawn on G4. And my opponent proceeded to play all engine moves. Now, I did have a long think about this before I played queen takes G4. I mean, I spent like all my time thinking about this. And what I had seen was a miscalculation in my mind. And I had seen bishop... Well, let's just go back 2 moves, because this is what I was looking at over the board. I saw queen captures, king f2, bishop g3 check. The king can't go here, so he has to go here. So king e2, and I'll just mark where the king is in green here, so you can see. And so then I saw queen takes c4, and so the king can't go this way. He can't go back because the bishop's holding both squares. And so he's got 2 options, this one or this one. And I saw this one, I capture the rook. And then he comes back forwards to one of these squares. And I can take the other rook. And yes, my opponent can move here and check me, but I'm fine. Or he can take my rook, but he's in the corner and my queen's going to come to b2 and check the king. So I just saw, this is beautiful. So this was the square that I thought my opponent was going to go to, d1. And I really wanted to beat this 1692. And I wanted to climb Everest and say, lads, I can beat everybody. I am great. I can achieve. But I didn't calculate this move. And I mean, if you're looking at this, like in your mind, you're like, what is going on? You know, queen takes g4, king f2, bishop g3. And then I had to consider, is bishop g3 correct? Maybe queen g3 is more correct. But then I was like, okay, then queen goes to g2 and then we can force this? No, we can't, because the queen's on g2 and the king can defend the rook from e1. So I mean, I was going through all this in my mind, and then I just decided, like, I think I see it. I think I see, maybe I can win this, but the king can get to d2, and I can't win it. So let's just go through the moves. Check, king here, check, king here, check, king here. And they're all the only moves possible. And here I played check because I was like, right, I might as well take another pawn. You know, I'll just do my best. He blocks with his knight, the only move. So he's played 4 of the only moves. And here I was like, what am I going to do? I don't know. I'm stressed. I've just thrown away a draw against a near 1700 and I'm going to lose. And I'm going to come out of this tournament with only 1 point. But I saw maybe bishop here. Take, and I could have another capture here and have unlimited checks. Just check for 6 years and win, get a draw. I offered my opponent a draw and he said no. And it was funny because previously he had raised his hand and said, would you like a draw? And I said nope, and went for this stupidity. But bishop e5, he takes my rook in the corner. And here I played f5 because I didn't want the king to escape to this square. And I thought after capture, check here, and if block, what was I thinking here? I don't remember. Why did I play this move? There was a reason for it. I can't quite remember. But anyway, I'm not going to go over it. Queen b7, check, a king moves a check, and here I saw, what if king captures? And this would be a big mistake. C5 check, winning the queen. And that was the last sort of trick I had, but he didn't do that. He was about to, and then he thought, and he had plenty of time. He took e takes d4. I check, he moves. I move my queen to the only square that defends a back rank checkmate, c8 and then rook over. He checks. I have to block. It's my only move. He checks again. I take his queen, and then I just say, right, I resign. Game over, you win. And Maritza was laughing her head off, and everybody was making fun of me, and I was a complete loser for not taking a draw. So I want to tell you guys, just going forwards, if in your life you ever get an opportunity to maybe go for a job promotion or hike Mount Everest, I want you all to just say, no, I don't need to do that. I can just be stagnant in my life. I don't have to do anything. I can just be mediocre. And I'm going to leave you guys with that. I hope you enjoyed my tournament, and my rating went down to 1480. Rianch played with a 90.5. I played with an 84.1. I'll see you all very soon. Bye for now.